she's a big Agatha Christie fan, has read, I think, every single Agatha Christie out there about 4 or 5 times each, which I love to hear. And to me is also a little funny because you already know who did it. But
Welcome to the show. I'm JasonShannon, author of the books The Zimmer Insurgency, The Hounds of Herein, and Tiger Blues. This is a podcast about indie writing, featuring excerpts, sample chapters, short stories, upcoming news, and interviews with a variety of other indie authors. Christian Jerry Marchioni is back with a new book out. Christian was previously on episode 51 discussing his debut novel, The Utopia. His second book, Who Killed Arnold Muller, goes in a completely different direction. It's a murder mystery set in small-town Ontario in modern day, and he keeps you guessing right up until the end. This was a riveting read, and it's freshly out on the shelves, having just come out in July. Christian and I talk about how to craft the mystery, feed the clues in, when to take them out, and I found a lot of parallels here with true crime cases. You'll hear me reference Casey Anthony and especially Jodi Arias herein. Christian and I do a reading from Who Killed Arnold Muller at timestamp 50 minutes 45 seconds. I give you Christian Jerry Marchioni. So this one is very different in tone from your first book. Different in tone, different in style, genre, everything. What made you want to jump over to this new genre here?
so I'll be honest. It's a little bit inspired by my grandmother who loves who loves mystery, crime fiction. She's a big Agatha Christie fan, has read, I think, every single Agatha Christie out there about 4 or 5 times each, which I love to hear. And to me is also a little funny because you already know who did it. But that's just how big a fan she is. So and she is one of the people who I guess kind of inspired me to write in the first place. Just her love for reading and books. So I thought the other one she enjoyed, but it wasn't really her genre per se. So I thought maybe I'll venture into a little bit of a different genre that I think she would really enjoy. And also, it's something I enjoy too because I do like mystery, uh, crime books. My now wife and I we watch a lot of like true crime stuff. So I just thought personally myself as well that it would be an interesting one to try to write about and see if I could make a bit of a challenge to myself too, a case that was realistic for modern day, but still could kind of be like a take on a whodunit. Yeah.
Well, I'm a big sort of murder mystery thriller fan as well. But usually the problem there is that it's too easy and you figure out the whodunit fairly early on, which I want to ask about how you kind of structured that to kind of avoid that, because you've really avoided that. Like, you don't have the reveal until like the very, very last chapter. And I was literally guessing up until that point. I'm like, I thought you were actually going to leave it on a bit of a cliffhanger, kind of have an open ending. And I'm like, oh, I guess the climax is this other thing, and we're never going to know if this woman behind bars actually did it or not. So how do you go about like developing it to just in your own mind, like, you know who the killer is from the get-go and building the book around that?
Yeah, I'd say when I was first outlining it, both in my head and on paper, I had an idea of who I wanted the killer to be by the end. And then it's just kind of structuring it. How do we get there while still making other options seem plausible without it venturing into a territory where it requires a lot of thinking that it's a little out there to get to the results I wanted. Um, I personally wanted to keep it a mystery that was logical and reasonable for uh, like the current world. So I didn't want to put in like a fantasy or magical element to it. Not that there's anything wrong with that, just my personal style. I wouldn't want to do that for this particular book. So I had the killer in mind, and then it was all about how are we going to get there in a way where I can make it seem like there's other possibilities that are still realistic. And I found one way for me that helped to do that was to make it so that the crime actually had occurred in the past as opposed to a present day crime. That let me outline it a little bit more in a way that um, for those who read the book, it'll make sense of how we got to the end there, where it could still make sense as to who done it.
Yeah, that's a good way of doing it. Of course, that comes with its own challenges of trying to fill in the reader on what the crime was, because it happened 10 years in the past. And you're mostly following Natalie Flint is kind of the central point of view character, who is a reporter. Her family's also tied in with the crime itself. So she's kind of trying to revitalize the story for her newspaper and re-investigating it, so to speak. But she's already aware of all the details, like both as a reporter and as someone tied in, like with the family. Uh, but the reader is not. So
Mm-hmm.
the way you do it, particularly with the YouTube documentary, true crime documentary that she watches, which lays everything out very nicely, and it's not very heavy-handed. It's not, oh, she sat down on the couch and reminisced that exactly 3:45 on the day of she was walking here and her sister had just reported in this. And like I generally dislike exposition like that,
Mm-hmm.
but filling it in by her like casually watching a YouTube documentary, which I think she would do, and most of us who are interested in these subjects probably would do that as well. It flowed very nicely. So congrats on that. Like you definitely kept me interested all the way through without making me bored.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, that was I'll again thank my wife for that because she loves watching these true crime podcasters on YouTube. So that was kind of the inspiration for that is, oh, maybe that would fit in well here as a way to, like you're saying, kind of present the backstory without her just kind of sitting there reminiscing on something that happened 10 years ago, which realistically, by that point, you're not going to remember absolutely every single thing that happened in that way. Or like you're saying, it could get boring for the reader or just sitting there and thinking about it. So thank you. I'm glad that had the intended worked out how it was intended to.
That the whole sort of sitting there reminiscing always kind of pulls me out, because
Mhm.
it kind of breaks the flow of the story again, because the character's not going to just sit there and reminisce about it so vividly.
Mhm.
Um, Now let's get into some of the details here, because this happened 10 years ago. Someone was arrested and is in prison for this. That's Tracy, who is this kind of narcissistic, person behind bars. Everyone believes she's the killer. Maybe she is the killer, and she's been filing lawsuits, and you know she's not very popular with anyone who follows true crime. But she also has the eye of the media on her, because, like, she's sort of the hot girl killer, and, very, very attractive type woman, which for me brought in total vibes of like Casey Anthony or Jodi Arias. And I follow true crime podcasts as well. I'm sure me and your wife could probably get along there. But there is this trope of like most killers tend to be like hideously ugly people that are,
Mm.
and their crimes tend to be very ugly as well. So the news has to kind of dance around it a little bit. But then you get this, attractive woman that comes along every now and then, and the eye of the camera just cannot let it go.
Mhm.
Was that a trope that you wanted to play with as well?
It was, yeah. I just thought from that perspective, just for me personally, like you're saying, the media does have, whether you're the killer or the victim in some cases, which for better or worse, a lot of times worse, especially in the victim's case. If you're not necessarily an attractive person, maybe you don't, or you are of a certain background, you don't get the coverage that you deserve. But it is a real thing that I think we see in the media. So for me, it it helped play it out where again to try to make it realistic. The fact that she was this attractive young female killer might get in real life more play in the media than if she was some some older man who's not particularly
Mm.
has anything stand out about them. So I was yes, playing into that trope a little bit for sure with her character.
Let's get into some of the details here. So Natalie Flint is your sort of central point of view character, who, as I mentioned, is a reporter for like a failing newspaper in Toronto. By the way, this has got a very Canadian feel to it. I know that the town is basically fictional, but you kind of situate it in there as like Guelph suburbs, or was it Guelph or London or
Guelph, yes, that's right.
yeah, Guelph suburbs. And but like I'm like I can totally see the highways that she's driving on to get to and from, and that's just a very local Ontario thing. But she doesn't really want to be involved in this because of her family's connection to the crime 10 years ago. But she's kind of roped into it to do this sort of revisiting of it for the news to hopefully bring new ad revenue and subscribers and whatnot to the newspaper. Give us a little bit of background there as to what, why you wanted to bring her in like that, why you wanted to make her a reporter, and what you're trying to say about, modern day newspaper industry.
Yeah, so I guess I'll answer the last part first. Is there's a lot of, in my opinion, these days, unfortunately, there's a lot of clickbaity stuff out there where there's not necessarily a lot of times even a real story. It's just a big headline. You click on the article and it's basically a bunch of nonsense, but they do it just to get ad revenue or just to get people to click on it or to maybe talk about it for 5 minutes to bring them back for something else. So I wanted her as a character to not necessarily love that idea, but she loved her job and the people around her enough that she was willing to kind of um, sacrifice her morals in a way to try to help the institution to survive, basically, because there is this weird dance where in some ways I understand why companies do that because they need the revenue and they're just trying to get it however they can, and if they can't get it then people lose their jobs. So from one perspective I do see why that would be a necessary thing, and then on the other side, from the consumer perspective, it's what am I paying for here, or what's the point of this article? Doesn't even seem like it has a point to it. So I was trying to balance that out in a way where um, she she saw kind of a little bit of both sides of it to give her a bit of a moral dilemma to kind of battle with as she went through her reasoning for why she was going to do this or not do this.
Yeah, and I can totally see that, and I also get, really annoyed when I click on
Mhm.
something that's obvious clickbait, and like, especially like when there's like 30 ads that pop up immediately, that's your obvious sign to click away. I want to get back to the sort of layout of how you set up the crime, the details of the crime, introducing the characters. One thing with any murder mystery, as I'm sure you're aware, you have to introduce a certain number of characters that could be the killer or it could be the suspect here, without making it too ballooned or too many characters that you see once and never see again. If I can step away for 1 second, I wrote a murder mystery a number of years ago. It's still not out. It's on its eighth draft. It has gone through serious revisions and needs more. And I'm dealing with that problem too, where there are several characters because some of them provide background, some of them provide world building, some of them are thrown in there to potentially be suspects. And then I have to either eliminate them or have them be red herrings or keep them in towards the very end where you might not know, there's still contenders in the running, so to speak.
It's
Um, you lay it out very nicely where you have Natalie go back to her small town. The family's all introduced. The sister who was dating the victim is comes into that. The details of the crime are being laid out. Some of the evidence with forensics and blood spatter and whatnot are being laid out as we go along here. The lawyers for both for Tracy and for there's another character who has a lawyer who was connected to the original case. That all comes in there nicely. And there's a homeless man as a witness there as well. Um, you cover a lot of ground. This is not, an especially long book, but you set it all up kind of at the beginning, and then you lay it out as you go, where each chapter is introducing something new, and it all feels very organic. How many drafts did you have to go through to lay that all out? Did you plot it all ahead of time to say chapter 13 is going to involve this lawyer coming in, or did you have to go through several revisions to get there?
Definitely several revisions. I had plotted out the main characters for so the different the lawyers, the potential different characters who could have been involved in the crime, the main characters, all that as a general outline, and then really what it was for me mainly, the first draft was just trying to get to the conclusion and then going back and making sure everything that came before it could conceivably lead to that ending without there being a spoiling it, like what the final answer is, and b um, putting in a detail that might not have
Mhm.
made sense for what the ending inevitably that I wanted to get to was. So for sure, it was a challenge to get there. I try to, like you were saying, like simplify it a little bit by not trying to go like too overboard as to how many characters who could have conceivably been involved in this was. But there was definitely a lot of starting writing something and then maybe going back and saying, "Oh wait, that kind of doesn't make sense because if this character does that,
Mm.
then that character can't do this," and a little. It's kind of a logic game puzzle in a way to get to the ending there. So there was an initial first draft that went where I actually wrote it pretty quick in like a couple of months, but then there was a lot of refinement after that to make sure that what I the conclusion I had come to would actually make sense based on what had come before it.
Was there ever a point in any of those drafts where you revealed too much and you're like, oh, this is going to be too obvious if I say this? I had to go back and cut it out?
A little bit, yeah. There was probably there would be a line, maybe something nothing too grand, but maybe just a line I would put in, and then I'd be like, that might be too much of a hint," and then I'd have to change it, just either take out the line or change it a little bit. I wouldn't say there was necessarily like a full scene or anything like that, or a full chapter that gave away too much, but just some of the word choices more than anything to make sure that I was still hinting without giving too much hint, if that makes sense.
I know exactly what you mean because
Mhm,
that's the problem I've had in
mhm,
several of the drafts I've gone through with mine because it's like I don't want it to be guessed
mhm, mhm,
before the reveal comes. I also don't want the reveal to come and then people are like, wait, I don't have no idea what that just was.
mhm.
And I've gone back and forth with it several times, and I'll add something in of like, no, that's way too obvious, or I'll get beta reading notes back, and they'll say like, I don't understand where this is going. So then I add something in. I'm like, no, if I add this in, it's again, it's too obvious. So I imagine that must have been a little challenging for you to go through.
For sure, it's definitely a delicate dance there to try to get to that point, and to be honest, until somebody else, because I could read it and think, oh, this is good now, but until other people read it, you never really know 100% if you've towed that line well. Um, but at some point, you gotta pull the trigger on it and see how it goes. But yeah, I tried to definitely tried to balance it out where I was giving the necessary clues to where it would be guessable, but not so obvious as to kind of uh get to the ending before we actually people actually got to the end of the book.
Mhm. Let's talk about Ernie Rivers for a second.
Mhm.
So this is one of the characters. I believe he's actually the only character besides Natalie who kind of gets his own point of view chapters. I could be mistaken on that. And he is kind of, I don't want to say the villain, but a villain who kind of crops up in this thing at a certain point. Um, Lay out who this character is and why you decided to go in this direction with him.
Yeah, so I really when I was first writing his character, I really didn't have a plan for him. I was just kind of looking for the generic, I like some type of generic person who I could put in kind of like a more villainy role to kind of as opposed to give the story kind of like a secondary piece to it,
Hmm.
as opposed to just being, because I was writing from like a 10 years past perspective of the actual crime. I felt that for this particular story, I wanted to add like a secondary piece to it so that um, it wasn't just people sitting around trying to guess at this 10-year-old crime the whole time. There was like actually something else going on in the present at the same time. Um, so when I was writing him, I didn't necessarily have a particular person in mind at first, but then with the whole murder mystery idea, the idea of him being this kind of conspiracy theorist, this like anti-government guy, this guy who has this feel that the world's against him in a way, it kind of just uh, for me fit in with the rest of the book as a way where it felt like to me that this might be the type of person who would involve himself in something like this, um, and give the story a bit of a different twist on it as well.
And this also kind of plays into what we were talking about earlier with the sort of failing newspapers, because he's kind of in it for the clicks himself. And there's, several issues with his line of thinking and his psychology. But part of it is that he gets a little bit of fame from his YouTube channel, and then he just kind of goes full tilt with that.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So he's kind of in some ways he contradicts himself because he doesn't like the media and he thinks they're all liars and this and that, but he wants to be the truth teller, but at the same time he kind of also wants to the attention of people and to make his own living doing kind of a similar thing. But that's part of his character arc. I felt like helped give him like a little more depth to him is to have kind of that that mindset, but maybe not at the same time necessarily realize it. Um, but yeah, exactly. Like you're saying, it's kind of like the same thing, but from the other side of the coin, almost is where I was hoping to go with him.
And as you were saying, like, because the crime is 10 years past, there's no real sense of urgency or danger. I guess the only real crime, or not crime, the problem that's going on is the failing newspaper and needing to get the story out, which is not a super strong justification for, a murder mystery story.
Right.
So adding him in to kind of, he kind of drives some of the action towards the end of the book. We'll leave it at that. But it adds a sense of urgency to things, which I think was done very well.
Thank you. Yeah, that was exactly like you're saying. That was kind of the intent of him as well. Because if it's just literally just we gotta put this story out here, there's yeah, like you're saying, there's not a whole lot to drive the action or to make the reader super interested in what's going on in the present. Um, but his involvement kind of gives uh, a different perspective because he also has his own reasons for wanting to drive the action and make things happen in the present day. Um, so yeah, you're 100% right. That was part of the intent for him as well.
Picture this: anarchist black bloc. Nameless, interchangeable protesters / agitators smashing windows, spray painting everything, trying to burn down courthouses. They want a completely liberated society, and the only way to get there is your complete subservience to the community, lest you be ostracized, denounced, manipulated, gaslit, coerced, or purged. And 90% of this is a LARP. This is the inspiration for my fifth novel, The Rise and Fall of Chaz Oregano. Pink-mohawked, vegan, angsty activist Alex Turin has immersed herself into an anarcha unit, and she has set herself the completely achievable goal of the total overthrow of society and its reconstitution upon the most tenuous of foundations. We follow Ms. Turin around her homeland, attending protests, commenting on the problematic nature of media or personal relationships, all while she's sliding deeper down a slippery slope towards criminality, terrorism, insurrection, and personal danger. The Rise and Fall of Chaz Oregano is a revolutionary young adult/new adult tale in a dystopian world. Check it out today in paperback, ebook, and audiobook. Details at www.jasonmshannon.com/The Rise and Fall of Chaz Oregano. And now back to the show. Now, Natalie is your main character here. Was there a reason why you chose to write with a female protagonist?
Not necessarily. My first book had a male main protagonist, so I kind of just wanted to write from a different perspective, but there wasn't necessarily a reason she had to be a female when I was first starting out. But I did kind of like the idea. I mean, obviously, I'm a male. I have a male perspective. It's I don't fully understand what it's like to be a female, but I wanted to write from that perspective so I could touch on a few different topics. Like I don't think this gives too much away, but the Natalie's sister, as part of the story, she had undergone some like domestic abuse and stuff like that. So just to add a little bit of a different a different perspective on some of these other topics, which had it been a male main character, I might not have been able to touch on in the same way. Yeah.
There might have been a bit of a barrier there. Like you could probably still address it, but you'd have to do a little bit more work to make it more realized.
For sure. Yeah.
There's also the aspect, I don't know if I'm sure your girlfriend could fill you in on this, but the sort of the true crime audience out there, I believe, is majority female, and women are just driven to this. So I was wondering if there might be like a little not self-insert, but kind of reader insert issue going on there where you're trying to put the reader into the minds of the character here.
For sure. Yeah. I think maybe not even initially having thought of that, but as I was as I was researching and doing putting more thought as I was going along here, I did kind of start to realize like, oh yes, this is true crime space is a space that it's predominantly female. So that did help in the sense of as a person reading it, maybe again you could put yourself more into that perspective as with a female main character as opposed to a male.
And there's also the first chapter kind of opens with Natalie visiting the prison where Tracy's being held. Tracy, the convicted killer from 10 years before, and there's this sort of confrontation that occurs quite early on, which was actually very well done because as I started reading, I didn't know, I just knew this was going to be a murder mystery. That's how you described it to me, but I didn't know really anything beyond it. I don't even think I had the back of the book synopsis for it because you sent me an early draft.
Oh, right.
And so I'm just reading and I was like, okay, she's like listening to Taylor Swift. She's on the road and now she's showing up at the prison and she's kind of nervous. And so, but like the whole confrontation that is set up there, I think the two women together makes for a different dynamic than if it had been a male character going and visiting, interviewing a female.
For sure, I agree. Yeah, I think that helped with that as well. It gave it more of like a personal rivalry feel as opposed to just this man coming in to interview this attractive female, which brings its own. I feel like the conversation is very different at that point as opposed to another woman going to talk to to a woman, especially uh, when they have a somewhat of a personal connection um, from previous. Um, so uh, so yeah, I definitely, as I was writing that, it made it um, it kind of yeah balanced out the scene. I think the way that having them both be female characters in that spot.
Now, despite what I said earlier about this being completely different from the Utopia, your first book, I do love the fact that you snuck in a little reference to the Utopia as like was like a new hit Netflix movie or something in there. A nice little like wink and a nod for people who are paying attention.
Thank you. Yeah, that part was definitely not in the first draft. That was kind of at the end. I was like, I didn't. I'll be honest. The maybe I forced that in a little bit more than 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 some of the other stuff. Definitely wasn't something that needed to be in there, but it was something where I for people who have read the Utopia, I thought they might appreciate just having like a little bit of a nod to that and kind of give that because for those who haven't read the Utopia, I don't actually ever say what the time period is of when the Utopia is existing, so that kind of gives like a little hint about well the timeline I was going for when uh, this fake futuristic country might come into existence. So just to give a little bit of yeah, and like a yeah nod to people who have read it and a little bit of self promotion as well if people hadn't read that book and maybe wanted to check it out afterwards.
Of course, yeah. I love little Easter eggs like that.
Mm,
I love it when I'm reading some other author and they sneak something in that clearly you're only going to get if you have read their previous
mm.
work. Because not only like do you get the joy of having that reference that of some previous book that presumably you liked, but also you get to know that you're a part of a small audience who's going to get that reference. And so it's almost like a little special gift for you. I used to include Easter eggs in my film or films. I wish there were films. My books like that, where it'd be like some very, very, hidden reference to something that canonically does not line up with previous books, but it's just like a little wink and a nod to the audience. I actually haven't done that in the past like two or three books because it just hasn't happened organically enough for me to sneak it in.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah, and again, I'll be the first to admit this one was maybe not the most organic as, like, as it could have been, but in the future, um, just to give I guess a little sneak peek to the audience out there, I am currently writing another crime style book that won't be out for a while. So, but and it will passively involve a couple of the characters from this book in much smaller roles, but just as another kind of Easter egg idea, like you're saying, just to kind of because I found that in some of the books I read, like you're saying, I appreciate those little references where you do feel like, oh, I know where this character's from, or the small little hints there, like you're part of like a group for that. Um, so that was definitely an idea there, and I think this next one will feel a little more organic than the first one.
Mhm.
But
Well, I would love to hear whatever you are able to share at this point about your the project you're working on currently.
yeah, absolutely. So uh, it's a crime thriller kind of idea. So this one, the crime takes place in another fictional Ontario town that's actually referenced in Who Killed Arnold Muller. It's the fictional town's called Farnborough, which is briefly again not a really a part of uh, Who Killed Arnold Muller in terms of none of the characters go there or do anything with it, but it's briefly mentioned. So this crime will take place in that town. It's kind of like a detective story trying to catch a serial killer who's popped up in the area, and there'll be yeah appearances, small appearances, this detective character is not mentioned in this current book, but some of the characters who are in this current book will play small roles in helping her try to catch who this killer is.
Yeah, I that sounds very I can't wait for it now. Like, you're gonna have to keep me posted on that one.
Yeah, for
You,
sure. Yeah, thank
yeah,
you.
because you just mentioned so Who Killed Arnold Muller is in a sort of fictional small town, Ontario, but as I said, has a very not just Canadian feel, but very like GTA, expanded area Ontario feel to it. And now you got the second one that's going to be in a similar area. Was it a conscious choice to make it as Canadian as it is? You also have a few references in there about, the Orange Man and his tariffs, which is a very, Canadian sentiment that's going to be understood right now. You could have easily just set this in like small town, undescribed, U.S. state or Canadian province, or not even specify the country. Was there a reason you leaned into Canada specifically?
Mostly for this one, I wanted to do because my first book really had nothing to do with Canada at all. It was kind of a fictional separate country. Um, I kind of wanted to do a story that was more local, just in general. I felt this one could fit. Partly was just because so I went to university in Guelph, so that's part of the reason I chose that area. It's because it's an area I know in terms of what it's like to. I lived there for 5 years, so I know some I know kind of what it's like to live in a in a in Guelph or a place like that. Um, and then I wanted to give it a more personal feel, and I felt just transparently it would be easier to write about somewhere, even though it's fictional, that has characteristics of the place that I've actually lived or been to, as opposed to just choosing a random, even somewhere else in Canada where I can have an idea of what it's like to live out there and I can research it, but it might not feel as authentic as if for for people who actually live in those places. And I try as best as I can. Of course, we're not going to be perfect, and everyone has a different perspective on the place they live. But to if I can bring an authentic, I want to try to bring an authentic feel to the actual town itself, as opposed instead of just the story and making it part of that.
I think that, sometimes you can try a little bit too hard to make it universalist by like unspecified fictional town somewhere. Sometimes it works nicely, but I've also read books where it's like they're really trying to make this universal, and it's not, you can see the what's the sort of expression, the Wizard of Oz expression, where like you can see the framing come into play here a little bit. I don't know, I'm butchering that, but you can behind the curtain. You can see behind the curtain a little
Mhm,
bit too much,
mhm.
and yeah, just the turns of phrase that some authors will use to be like, oh, and then they turned on to Main Street, and Main Street became First Street, and like as the, it becomes a little bit too obvious that you're trying to hide it.
Right. Yeah. So I wanted to give it for for people from those areas. Uh, Again, it's a fictional town, so it's not gonna be representative of anything specific. Kind of like it can give like a little bit of a nostalgia because, let's be honest. At this point, I'm a local author. I'm not selling books in California right now. So so the people I do sell to, hopefully either from around Toronto, friends, family, local people. Maybe it gives them a little bit of a nostalgia or something that they can relate to, in a way where if I had just made it generic wherever, that might not exist. But if you are reading it from somewhere else, you could still picture it as kind of a small town. Nothing too outlandish either.
I think we're becoming more globalized as a society anyway, where
Mhm.
even this is going to sound a bit of a too harsh for our American listeners here, but even Americans who think that there's the world continent of the contiguous United States and the two islands of Alaska and Hawaii, and that's it. Even they're becoming aware of, like, they can enjoy things that take place in other countries, other towns, um, and it doesn't need to be, oh, I'm enjoying this because it's British. No, it's just I'm enjoying this,
Hmm.
and it's becoming better that way, I think. So it opens up more space for small towns outside of California or New York to get their moment in the sun.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm full agreement with that. And myself, I find if I read a story, I tend to personally not care too much where the setting is, as long as it's a good story. If there are relatable elements, that's excellent. I appreciate that, but it doesn't necessarily have to be somewhere I've lived or I've even heard of for me to enjoy the story or the setting even.
One character we haven't talked about is Arnold Muller himself, the titular character. Now, as it's implied, he is dead as of the time of the book's setting, but he is actually a fully fledged character as well, with a very important backstory, connections to Tracy, to the Flint family, and just his own personal stuff going on. Again, like, you fill in his backstory very well, despite the fact that he gets, zero page time. If this was a movie, there wouldn't even be an actor cast for him.
Mhm.
How did you go, like, I guess fill in his backstory as he's not the most innocent victim in the world. We'll say that. And what was sort of the planning there to fill out his character and make him the complicated guy that he is?
Yeah, so for him, it was I wanted to make him someone who wasn't necessarily a martyr, not someone who this character died, and you could see kind of both sides of it, where he has some in his backstory, he has some good qualities. Some might even say quite a few good qualities, but he also has some very dark and bad uh, qualities to him as well. Some seriously very dark qualities. If for those who, without giving away too much, who wish to go ahead and read the book. But I want to give him some complexity to him. So it's uh, in part um, because if I made him too much one way or the other, it might it might hint at some of the finer points of the mystery. I'll put it that way. But also, I just felt that it gave him it made him more interesting than as just kind of like a generic. Okay, this guy's just dead, but we don't really care about him because he's not actually part of the mystery. He's just the dead character. I wanted to have him actually have a personality, even though he wasn't going to be um, part of any scenes physically as a living person.
Was that difficult to work in all these complex backstory without him actually appearing?
A little bit for sure. Yeah, it was. It's definitely one of those again where you write the first draft and he's kind of very generic at the beginning, but then as you go back and edit, it's like, okay, maybe I can add a piece here about something he did, or add a part here about something he said, or just stuff like that, to give him more depth than had initially been written for him. But uh, he needed to be, in order for the mystery to work, I felt he had to have um, certain qualities to him, like a certain personality where he could be in some ways both loved and hated by kind of everyone uh, he came across in his life, which again can be a bit of a delicate line to walk. But that was one aspect where maybe it kind of helped that he was dead and didn't have any physical actions in the present to him, because you can kind of craft his story a little bit easier when it's just stuff in the past and he doesn't actually have to contribute anything in the present. to kind of mold him the way that makes more sense for the rest of the characters, to kind of give some insight into that.
I know from having talked off mic here, you're not super familiar with the sort of the Casey Anthony Jodi Arias case, but what I kind of brought up earlier, with Jodi Arias in particular, like the man she killed, I guess we can say killed because she was convicted. He's also not like a martyr. There was, he was kind of using her for sexual purposes when she wanted something more. And anyway, for people who follow true crime, like that's, a major thing that kind of adds some nuance to that story. I guess last question here. Did your grandmother like the book?
She did. She read it, and for people wouldn't know this obviously, but my grandmother is a very forward person, so if she doesn't like something, she'll tell you she doesn't like it. But she did she did thankfully enjoy this book. I think part of that, is because she loves the genre. So let's be honest, that has something to do with it. But I think she appreciated the different mystery elements, and that hopefully others will agree with her, and that they came together in a way that made sense while still producing a book that where the characters had some actual personality and story to them, because I do find that one thing about the mystery genre that sometimes gets lost is the characters can be very generic, that in certain sometimes people in that genre will they focus so much on the mystery that they don't really care about the characters and what they do. It's just solely a mystery book. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, of course. But I personally wanted to have the characters also have their own personal stories to them as part of the mystery, and she seemed to appreciate that part of it as well. So hopefully, for others who go out there and read it, they'll find the same thing.
Well, I for one agree with your grandmother, and it's a great book. I loved your first book, but this one, despite again, I can't emphasize enough, being completely different, you would not know the same author wrote them. But except for the fact they're both good.
Thank you, Jason. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, we're gonna get into a reading here in just 1 second, but first, Christian, where can people find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at Christian Jerry Marchioni. Marchioni spelled Marchioni. You can find me on LinkedIn if you want to connect there. Facebook, I'm not a big presence on social media in terms of I'm not on there all that much. But I do check it. And if you want to reach out, ask any questions about the book before you made a purchase, feel free. I'm always happy to chat. You can the book is available on Amazon, in print or ebook version, so you can get it there. And for people in the GTA, again, if you want to contact me personally, you can. I have physical copies as well, if you prefer to purchase that way. Um, and in terms of upcoming events, I will be at the Word on the Street Festival in Toronto at the end of September. I don't have any other events currently planned. It's been a bit of a busy time for me. Like we've discussed at the beginning, I recently got married, so kind of almost most of my focus has been on that. But a little bit more free now, so we'll maybe look into more events in the future, and whether it be word on the street or online or anywhere else, I look forward to connecting with anyone out there who wishes to chat. And I always value feedback on my books, for anyone who reads and wants to discuss or leave a review. I greatly appreciate that. So thank you very much to anyone out there for listening and for your interest.
Yes, and if anyone out there wants to leave a comment on this episode, if you've read his book and you found the mystery engaging, I'm sure I can get him back on the horn here to respond to whatever comments you've got.
Absolutely.
A conniving concubine tries to claw her way into power. a femme fatale assassin, goes after a high-profile target at a royal gala. A bandit kingpin commands his own regime of extortion and murder in the deep desert. Coming soon, I present the audiobook for The Moon Panther. In a post-apocalyptic world, warlords and bandits are at the top of the pile. Eking out a meager life in rural Australia, a guild of assassins tries to balance the scales. Josephine, in a backless dress, has to go undercover to take out a notoriously corrupt official in New Zealand. George, who's too old for this shit, goes after the most ruthless of them all, the bandit kingpin, known only as the Moon Panther. Meanwhile, in the imperial capital, a lowly official is being swindled by the glamorous, beautiful, and alluring Empress Concubine, who's running her own schemes. The Moon Panther is fully recorded and being edited now. Go back to episodes 28 and 23 to listen to previews, and join my mailing list for all the updates. Okay, so we're going to get into the reading here. Christian, I'll just get you set up. Where in the book are we, and what do readers need to know as we go into this?
For sure. So we're at the end of the third chapter here. So far, what's happened is the main protagonist here, Natalie Flint, has attended at Marlingville Penitentiary Prison in the fictional town of Marlingville, Ontario, to visit Tracy Kolsky, who is the convicted killer who was the one who was convicted of killing Arnold Muller 10 years prior. And Natalie is here is in her capacity as a journalist to interview Tracy about that murder, because there's been recently some more publicity about it again for the 10-year anniversary of it. And Natalie and her newspaper are hoping to capitalize on that and get more of a following for their newspaper.
And she's also kind of snuck in under semi-false pretenses with a bit of a fake name.
Yes, exactly. So she's kind of playing it off as she has had a prior personal history with Tracy, but as of this point, Tracy is unaware of who Natalie is. So Natalie knows who Tracy is very well, but at this point in time, Tracy does not recognize Natalie or who she is. She slipped her notebook into her tote bag and hung it on her shoulder. With her right hand, she waved it at Officer Gupta, signaling her intent to leave. She stood up.
Wait, what did you say?
Tracy hadn't left her seat, but was looking up at her. Natalie had expected to see the continuance of rage in those eyes, but her expression now was that blank, thoughtless stare. She looked almost robotic. She remembers now, Natalie thought. She remembers now who I am. She felt her heart pounding in her chest.
You didn't say Flint, did you? No, you couldn't have possibly said Flint. They told me it was Flynn, Natalie Flynn with the Toronto Inquirer. That's what they said.
Did they? Natalie replied. She tried to sound confident, but she knew her voice was shaking. It was the look in Tracy's eyes, expressionless, somehow worse than anger. She didn't look human. They must have misheard then when I spoke to them on the phone. Only they hadn't at all. When she had first called the prison, she had indeed told them her name was Natalie Flynn. She was from the Toronto Inquirer, and she was looking to do an interview with Tracy Kolsky for a new article she would be writing. All of that was true except for the last name, which she figured was close enough to her real name that they wouldn't think anything of it when her ID and visitor application forms were submitted. They would think they had misheard and would probably not even let the inmate know of this small error. After all, the woman was crazy and wanted to tell her tale of innocence to anyone who would listen. What difference could a few letters make?
They must have misheard the name, Tracy repeated. It's Flynn? It's Flint, not Flynn? As in Madison Flint? As in your...
Expressionless. Nothing behind the eyes. No way of knowing what she was thinking. She looked like a zombie, and though Natalie had never been particularly haunted by horror movies, now she was afraid. Afraid of La Llorona. afraid of this devil in a purple uniform who, if she got her hands on her, would probably beat her until she turned her own shade of purple or violet or black and blue. But she had to stand her ground. Yes, as in I am Madeline Flint or Madison Flint's sister. At that, Tracy sprang up suddenly as though she were a mole in a whack-a-mole machine. And that might have been fine if Natalie were equipped with a hammer, but she had nothing for her defense. Her heart was thundering in her chest. She backed up and nearly tripped over her rhino chair, managing barely to hold her balance.
"You tricked me," Tracy said. "You'll pay for that, Natalie. You and your bitch sister, you'll both pay."
Natalie said nothing back. She had thought Tracy might try to rush her and get her pound of flesh right then and there. She was serving a life sentence after all, and given her past actions, the odds she was getting paroled any time soon were slim to none. But once she had sprung up, she never moved from her position. Like a volcano fixed into the earth, like a weed that wouldn't die. Tracy stood in place and watched as Officer Gupta led her safely away out of the room, away from the ghost of her family's past that she had just summoned back into their lives.
All right, well, Christian Marchioni, we will wait with bated breath for the next crime fiction book from you.
Thank you, thank you. Uh, you'll be waiting with bated breath for a little while, but but hopefully it's worth the wait by the time it gets there. But thank you so much, Jason, for having me on. I really appreciate it, and I hope to do more of it in the future. And you're just a great guy to chat with. So I hope everyone out there, obviously, if you're listening to this podcast, you know of Jason and are checking out his books. But he deserves all the reading and praise you're giving him. So keep supporting him. He deserves it.
Thanks to Christian for coming on the podcast. This weekend, assuming there's no major updates with forest fires, I will be at the Blueberry Blast Festival in Nipigon on the shores of Lake Superior. By the time you're listening to this, I will already be on the road. In September, I will be at the Cogs and Clockwork Steampunk Festival in Fergus, Ontario, where I will predominantly be marketing Tiger Blues, and I will be at CanCon in October in Ottawa. I am currently seeking beta readers for my upcoming book, Taming the Laser Leopard. You will receive a free ebook version of the current draft and a list of a few questions to be answered after reading, which will help to provide feedback before publication. I'm also asking you to leave an honest review on Goodreads. If you are interested, please email me today at jm1shannon@gmail.com. The book is 51,000 words and would have an R rating if it were a movie. Next week, I've got romance author Meg Lush coming on to talk about her book, Two for the Love of One. Cheers, everyone.